This is NBR.
Good evening, everyone. The fragile housing market is showing fresh signs of life as home prices in cities across the country rose more than expected this summer. The S&P Case-Shiller Index of 20 U.S. cities rose 0.9% in June. That's the fifth straight month of gains and the second in a row where all cities in the closely watched index showed increases. Detroit, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Atlanta recorded the biggest month-over-month gains. Meanwhile, Phoenix continued to bounce back from poor conditions. Prices there up 14%. S&P Index expert Maureen Maitland says the housing market is starting to make a modest but steady recovery.
Most of the market's prices have deteriorated enough that people are beginning to want to buy. Home prices have fallen in some markets as much as 50% over the last 2 years. Housing is basically very affordable, interest rates are very low, and people are beginning to become more confident.
Well, speaking of low mortgage rates, they're attracting more than just new home buyers. 80% of all of the mortgage activity in the U.S. currently is for refinancings. Suzanne Pratt takes a look at exactly who's getting those new loans and when it makes sense to refinance.
Bob Patlin knows a lot about the trim that goes on clothes. That's because he heads one of the nation's largest button and zipper suppliers. But when it came to outfitting his Long Island home with a refinanced mortgage, Patlin needed help. That's because his loan was at the sky-high rate of 10.75%. After a false start with a big bank, Patlin landed at Equity Now, a New York-based mortgage banker.
I don't think it took 2 weeks. Until we had an approval or anything like that. I may be wrong, but I know it was relatively quick. And if it took that long, it was probably my fault because I don't work on Fridays when they're looking for me.
The staff at Equity Now got him a 15-year fixed mortgage at the much more palatable rate of 3 3/8%.
So that's great. So that you went from $15.87 a month to $11.76, savings of $4.11. Total savings of almost $5,000 a year.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
More money in your pocket for your wife to spend.
That's right. That's right.
Equity Now President Michael Moskowitz says surprisingly there are plenty of homeowners like Patlin still paying high-rate mortgages. And then there are those who refinanced as recently as a year or two ago and now find that rates are even lower. Whether it pays to do another refi depends on how long you plan to stay in the home and where you live, as costs vary from state to state.
So we are in New York, where we have mortgage tax and basically high closing costs. In New Jersey, you can close a $300,000-$400,000 loan with closing costs of about $2,500.
In low-cost states, it may even make sense to get a new mortgage if the rate is only half a percentage point lower. Which begs the question, where are mortgage rates headed next? That depends on the U.S. economy and the 10-year bond in particular.
If you are a little bit more bearish on the economy, yes, I would definitely wait to refinance and give it another 3 months when you'll probably have a good chance of doing it at 3.25.
As for Patlin, another refi could be in his future.
If the rate went down and the savings was there, yes. Yeah.
Suzanne Pratt, NBR, New York.